Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hello all and welcome to the EarthWorks podcast. This week I'm your host Jack Higgins and I have the pleasure of sitting here with my man, Mr. John Chassard, Lehigh Country Club. This is the guy, everybody, that has always made sure that I'm well taken care of. Johnny, I appreciate it.
Well, that kind of worked the other way too at one point in time. So
We take care of each other.
we do.
All right, well, that's good.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
That's right. And also, really, you did teach me about this whole thing, this whole EarthWorks thing. You introduced me to it.
Well, I was going to say, this is pretty much the same relationship I have with your boss.
That's right. That's right.
He feeds off of me. I feed off.
That's exactly right. Except I met you when I was 20.
Yeah, right.
And Joel's still 20.
And you were kicking Renovate out across the greens after we would aerify.
Oh, I remember. Like, that's the other thing. Like, anybody that's had trouble spreading or spraying EarthWorks, I know what it's like.
It's just, Joel and I go back a long time, as you know, so that we have a lot of history that he would certainly not want me to start talking about.
That's good. That's good. Well, you have a lot of history at Lehigh Country Club.
I do.
Yeah. So let's see. We're going into spring of 25. What was your first season here?
This was my 42nd year.
Oh my gosh.
So it was March of 1983 that I started.
Oh, so you started that time of year too.
Yeah.
This early.
Yeah, right out of. I started as an internship up in Long Island, and Dave Miller, who I worked for over at Saucon the year before, called me up and said, hey, there's an assistant's position opening at Lehigh.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I talked to the superintendent. He goes, I really think you should give him a call. And I said, Lehigh, where's that?
Which is crazy because you grew up.
I grew up in the Lehigh Valley, never even knew this place was here.
Essentially, you grew up at Saucon for years.
Yeah.
Your father was the tennis pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. But you're right. It's over the mountain here, and Lehigh was kind of hidden.
It's been under the radar. It was under the radar for many, many years. It's starting to get a little bit more exposure now, but yeah.
It really is getting more exposure.
Yeah.
I think in the greenkeeper world, like on our side, it's gotten more exposure. But also in the golf world,
yeah,
it's gotten more exposure. How
does
that happen?
I just think I think there's so much more attention brought to classic golf courses now. And there's a lot of golf enthusiasts out there that really focus on classic architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And this is obviously an old William Flynn golf course.
Mm-hmm.
There are many great William Flynn courses in the Philly area.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's more attention brought to it because of that. So, you work through it. We've gotten a little bit more exposure hosting, state events and stuff like that. And
on our side, you had on the superintendent side, you hosted a Met event.
The Met a few years ago, yeah.
And everyone was so amped about it. I know that just brought the awareness.
A lot of guys really loved it. I mean, the guys like up in Rhode Island and Connecticut that came down and again,
Mm-hmm.
The Met has a reputation of being held at great clubs, and no one heard of Lehigh.
Yeah.
But fortunately, we had a great turnout. Unfortunately, it got rained out halfway through.
I remember.
So we've talked about possibly hosting it again in the near future. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, so we're gonna get into a bunch of stuff, but something we want to get to particularly, you already brought it up. This classic golf course. It's what, 100 years old?
Yeah, we're gonna.
This year, right?
Well, 26 really is when the golf course was built. So the course, the club itself is a little bit older than that, but the golf course at this location will be 100 years next year.
Cool. That's interesting to me. Where was the club before here?
Over in Bethlehem.
Oh, really?
And it was a 9-hole course.
Oh.
And the clubhouse burnt down. And they went searching for new land, and back at that time, you pretty much had your pick.
Oh yeah.
So that was another great thing about the classic architects is they were able to find great land to work with.
Yeah, and this is really great land.
It is.
So the Little Lehigh River cuts through this property. It meets up with the Lehigh River, which is the Lehigh Valley, goes to the Delaware. It's a cool piece. But this particular piece of property, how did Flynn use the river? How is it classic like that?
Well, Flynn was known for his routings. He was great at routing golf course amongst great land. So again, look at Philly Country Club, Lancaster, Manny's. I mean, all of them around Philadelphia area. They're all great pieces of land.
Lancaster's so much like here.
It is, and we've often been referred to as like sister courses because of
I can see
they got the stream running through there that really floods. Our floods pretty good as well, but no. So yeah, he did an inside out routing where basically the front 9 is around the perimeter of the property and the back 9 weaves back and forth on the interior of the property. The river comes into play on 5 holes, and it's special.
And I guess what's special about the inside out is that, and I'm thinking about this property has some distinct geographic differences. And when you do an inside out routing, like you can go onto each of those separate geographies hole after hole and then come back to them.
Yeah, you're taking advantage of the elevation changes essentially twice.
There you go.
As you go through the
That's
property.
a good way to put it.
So yeah.
Yeah, because you have the up top section of this property, then you have down the river section, and then you have another up top section.
Right.
And you're right. You get to access that then 2 different times if you do an around the outside and then back in the middle.
And even how he utilized the river. You have to cross the river for 3 holes.
Number 4.
4, 11, 7.
Okay.
You cross the river. 13 you cross it, but you're also kind of playing parallel to it.
Oh, that's right. 13 is a par 3.
Yeah,
that the river would really take up the entire hole.
Yeah,
essentially.
Right. And 12 plays parallel to the river off the tee, which is a great hole. So 12 and 13, you're not crossing the river on 12, but it certainly comes into play. 13, you're crossing the river, plus you're playing it parallel. A lot of guys will pull that shot and miss it into the river. I've done it numerous of times, but yeah, so it is genius how he was able to utilize it and really emphasize, as you said, like the geographical features of the golf course.
Yeah, cool. So when was this in his career? Do you know? 1926, was that like square in the middle? Was it?
A lot of the good golf courses in the area again were like in that 10-year period. And then he started getting famous, and he went out to Cherry Hills, and he went down to Florida, and the country club up in Brookline, obviously. So I mean, he started bouncing around a little bit outside of the area. I'd say it was probably pretty much in the end of middle of his career.
Right. Yeah. Like when he was at the kind of core of what he was doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so classic golf, 42 seasons here. You've seen all different turf types. But by the way, you've been here for more than 40% of the age of this golf course.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh my God!
I still feel like a young.
There's Poa annua that's there's old German bents that have been here less than you. Oh, that's funny. Okay.
Yeah, you know what? If you want to get into it, I mean, one of the worst things I probably did in hindsight was kill these greens back in 1990 when we methyl-bromide them and reseeded to bent, because it was like, we were starting to experience a lot of anthracnose. At the time, we didn't know it was anthracnose because it hadn't been identified yet. I used to call it Lehigh disease.
This is exactly what I want to get into. Okay, yeah.
And we were pretty much predominantly Poa annua at the time.
So this was only 7 years into your time here, and then that means only like 4 years into your being the top guy.
Yeah, so I took over. Yeah, right. Yeah, I took over in '87
Okay.
as super. So yeah, it was 3 4 years later that I convinced them to kill their greens, and we were doing a. It started out as a master plan with Ron Force, and the bunkers really drove it because the bunkers were horrible. But then it
Okay.
was like, all right, we want to recapture some of the lost green areas because back in the '40s during the war, they shrunk the greens to try to reduce the maintenance.
Oh,
They
interesting.
eliminated bunkers to try to reduce the maintenance. And so we wanted to try to get a lot of that back.
So it was really greenside bunkers that started the project.
Greenside for the most part, and restoring some of the fairway bunkers that had been grassed over.
Okay. What was it? Original sand in them? Do you think back then? What was it like?
No,
It
I
was.
mean, there was some of the bunkers had 2 feet of sand in them.
Was there any
It was
drainage
just
in them?
because no, it
No.
was the stuff that was added, flashing, getting splashed up around the edges of the greens. I mean, some areas we took off 18 inches of crowned up area around the edges of the bunkers. And, just really, Ron was great with really understanding Flynn. And at the time, a lot of my members didn't even know who Flynn was, nor really cared. But we
Mm-hmm.
knew there was a number of architects that were in here beforehand. And as I started becoming more and more educated, I started realizing that we had something special here and it needed to be taken proper care of.
So you and Ron really wanted to expose the old bones
Mm-hmm.
and find
Mm-hmm.
like those contours, those old bunkers, like you're saying. But with that came the temptation of, hey, we got new sexy grasses. We can make it as clean as a whistle. We can, totally melt out everything else that's here. You said methyl bromide, which was also the start of you working with
That's
EarthWorks.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Not only did I kill all the poesy and
Right.
everything else in the soil, I killed everything.
Everything.
So,
Okay.
but yeah, so
Who were you working with on the grass side, on the turf side? Were you talking to Penn State? Was it
Dr.
a
Dewich,
USGA
yeah,
thing?
Dr. Dewich
Okay.
was intimately involved with this. He actually was working with a couple new types of bent that he
Was
wanted.
this the A series?
No, this was back the G's. So
Okay.
he wanted Lehigh to be one of the first courses with one of his G series grasses,
Interesting.
and fortunately, I'll
Right.
say that now,
Right.
they didn't yield enough seed to be able to seed all 21 greens. So then we
Wow.
reverted back to Penlinks 2 and seeded with that. And then
Wow.
Pinehurst ended up becoming his first G2 golf course.
Oh, interesting.
And then, which I had since think that grass has disappeared.
No one uses it.
No. I mean, it never ever really made it to mass production.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So that was the decision back in 1990.
Yeah.
When did the golf course have to shut down?
We closed in mid-August.
Uh-huh.
and opened Memorial Day, I believe. So
Okay, so mid-August was the end of that season.
yeah,
Tents. What was methyl bromide like? What, you have to lay tarps and
yeah,
stuff?
we made covers up for all the greens. Literally made them up ourselves. We just bought large sheets, cut them to size. And all this was, with the help of Dewich, Dr. Dewich, who really kind of guided me through it. It was fun. I mean, I had a lot of fun working with him, and I mean, he obviously was an icon in the industry, but it was a great relationship, and I was a kid, literally.
Yeah, you were.
And he, he wanted me to succeed. So it's his idea just to buy blank canvases of covers, cut them to the green shape, use a seed bag sewing machine to piece them together.
Oh, cool.
And so yeah, it was fun. It was fun. So we had customized tarps for every green.
I'm picturing, because I worked on this crew, I'm picturing all the crew guys that were doing this work.
Yeah, yeah.
They all had fun doing it. That's the other thing I gotta let everyone know about you, is that you've cultivated. Look at the nice EarthWorks C3 mug. There it is. You cultivated. Here's Brett coming through now.
He always brings donuts.
Yeah, bro. I come in with the donuts.
How are you?
I'm good, man. We're recording, but no, it's all good. We'll cut out the middle, dude. It's all good. No, you're fine. How's work today?
It's good.
All right, good. A little cold out there.
We didn't die from the tree. So
Good.
All right.
That'll help. Hey, you got it, Brett.
Thanks.
Yeah, man. That's the thing, dude.
Yeah,
I was on
all these guys, so you know.
I know the
exactly.
deal, and I'm picturing Mikey and Slimbo and Ranger and
Oh,
Nestor and sewing these
Doug
tarps
Meadows,
together.
one of my old assistants, who since had moved on and went out.
Yeah, this
to
was before
LA
Ryan was here.
Oh,
Ryan, yeah. Ryan was
Yeah.
here 10 years after this. So anyway, that's fun. So that was the decision, was that methyl bromide, and we're gonna Sai, you want to go out? Yeah.
Crack the door for her. Snow's sitting out there too. It's a dog pound around here.
All right, dog pound.
Okay, go. Say hi to Jack. Come on,
gosh.
go lay down. Oh.
Come on there, doggy. You lay down right here.
Come on, Snow. Over
You're
there.
all right.
Go lay down. Go lay down. Get me all dirty. Yeah, so we decided, I kind of talked them into it. I was like, listen, we're dealing with, this old crappy grass on these greens, and we got disease issues, we got this, I got the, state of the art.
It was anthracnose, you're saying?
Yeah.
That you would, so, but it was, did people not like diagnose that back then? Was it, that wasn't really a thing, right?
It wasn't a thing.
That's what I remember hearing.
So it kind of started coming about, maybe in the mid to late 90s, where it was kind of identified. And
is it real? Is it very much fertility related, like they say? Does that, or is not fully?
I think I think drainage definitely plays a part in it, because of a lot of our swales and the greens were the areas that were getting affected and staying wet and so on. But yeah, Steve McDonald always told me, because I battled anthracnose for years, and I always tried to keep very lean greens, and he always used to say, John, you're going to have to drop the nitrogen bomb one of these days to get this stuff to clean out.
There you
but
go.
We got it pretty well under control now.
Yes. Okay, so when it came to new grasses, was it also a new root zone or a new drainage?
We basically kept our old push-up greens. We had 4 or 5 inches of nice mix on top of clay base.
Wow.
So we did zero drainage, internal drainage. My thought was that bentgrass was going to handle that a lot better than what the POA at the time was handling it. And I learned.
Yeah, interesting. I did know the answer there, but that is like an interesting side, because nowadays, if you were going to convert to bent, you would do a sand root zone, and you would just do the whole damn thing, right? And you would have even done that here had you made that decision.
Yeah, and we talked about rebuilding the greens, and they didn't quite have the technology then as they do now with the green scans and everything. We had great greens, and everybody knew that, and they didn't necessarily want to lose that. So it was like, okay, well, let's gas them. And hey, if we have to, we can gas them again in another 15 years or whatever. Yeah,
that's right. Like like on the podcast, Rabideau at Wingfoot talked about doing that, but they had like those variable depth scans and everything like that. So they were able to maintain that full green surface exactly as it is. And it wasn't available back then.
Right.
Okay. But
plus the expense of it.
Oh, yeah.
It was relatively inexpensive to methyl bromide the greens, and then we came back in and seeded in them ourselves.
And you didn't even lose that much golf. Like, you did it from August to May.
Yeah, we opened up middle of May or Memorial Day. So
that's you did it fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so however, the not doing a new root zone, it allowed you the chance to, as you have been here, you've gotten away from that. And had you done a new root zone, you would probably have been stuck with bentgrass forever.
Maybe not. It's interesting. You mentioned Wingfoot. They lifted their sod and put it back down because they wanted to keep what they had.
Of course.
today I would do the exact same thing. We rebuilt the 11th green this past fall. We stripped the sod off of it. We saved it, rebuilt the green. I put a modified mix in, not a USGA mix, but I also put in 2-inch drainage on 6-foot centers throughout the green.
Kind of like an XGD sort of
Kind of like an
approach.
XGD, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
No gravel layer, no nothing. Did that in the clay base, filled the trenches with the mix, and then
Maybe
did
another,
variable
like,
depth mix
you
on the
did?
green
Oh,
in different
interesting.
areas.
Ooh, cool.
Because the green's very sloped. You haven't seen it yet.
No, I haven't.
But it's it's gonna be cool. So but yeah.
Okay, so and then you put that sod back.
And we put the sod back.
Okay, yeah. Now, because let's talk about what that sod is, because this was 1990 that you went to bentgrass, but that was now 35 years ago.
Yeah.
You've really developed a POA greens again.
Yeah, I had battled winter play and all of that. I had a member that was very aggressive and ended up becoming the president, and he's very pro bentgrass, but he also loved his winter play at the time. Now he goes down and spends his winters in Florida, so it's not as much of an issue. Great guy. He's a big advocate for me, but we've argued a lot about.
And he wanted to be out here in December
bent POA and all that stuff. So yeah, so at some point in time, I mean, we overseeded bent, kept overseeding bent, this, that, and I just felt like, every year I'm just not gaining. Started getting into more growth regulators, doing all that kind of stuff.
Did you go like the trim it route for a long time, just trying to keep the POA at bay?
Yeah, and the bent would get real leggy and wide blade it, and then it just seemed like during the season you get the bents just thriving and the POA wasn't, and then you get those. As the day goes on, it gets a little bumpier and stuff. So, at some point in time, I realized I had to flip the switch, and I committed to farming POA instead of bentgrass.
That's right. And that was really after me, I'd say. I left in 2009.
Yeah, so I'd say probably 15 years ago.
Okay, yeah. It wasn't worth the battle.
No.
And also the POA surface is so nice.
And it was funny, you're talking about Steve McDonald. I mean, I had some really bad green environments out there with trees and lack of air movement and lack of morning light. And, I'd have Steve out, and it was always obvious what we needed to do. But, you're never an expert in your own backyard. You have to bring people in to be able to sell everything.
That's right.
So, but in cutting those trees down, exposing those areas, I mean, these greens almost were 100% Poania. And at the time we were struggling, but once we improved the environment, they became some of the best greens on the golf course.
That's right.
And once the annual types of Poania worked their way out of it and the perennial types kind of took over, I mean, these greens were like bulletproof. And I was like, I want this on all my greens.
Wow. So what greens did you really start?
5 was probably the first one. 14, 4 was one. I think 4 was probably an issue when you were here.
4 was always a struggling green for you. Like the upper side, the collar. But I remember there was a giant hedgerow, like a 12-footer, all the way around.
Even more than that.
Yeah. Around the whole green.
Yeah.
But wrapped around a corner. It's on the corner of the property, but you took that down.
And to the east, where the farmhouse is, that was all loaded with trees.
Oh, that's right. There was a big white pine grove there.
Took all those trees out.
Yeah, you've removed a lot of trees.
We have. We really opened up a lot of areas.
And probably up on 5, there was a bunch of hardwoods,
big oaks.
Yeah, that would have had to have come down.
So yeah, but what a difference in a couple years and letting those areas evolve, letting the POA evolve, getting used to the conditions. And Steve was the one that told me, he said, listen, give it 3-5 years. These are going to be some of your best greens. And he was absolutely right.
Okay, well, let's get into a little bit more specifics, because some of the obvious ones we know, air movement, try open it up and get some sunlight. But what other kind of different cultural practices do you do with POA greens, as opposed to when you were really trying to discourage POA?
Right. I mean, and I still have some greens out there that have a fair amount of bent in them, and they're the ones that always had great exposure up around the clubhouse. At the great air movement, great light. and the bent has done well. So I whack them hard with growth regulators,
Okay.
and then
What is it now?
it's
Because I think it was obvious,
back then we
it was trim it
trim
to keep the POA at bay and encourage the bent.
and legacy, and then started getting into primo, and now I use a combination of primo and annua, which seems to work really well for me. The annua is just a nice steady regulation where I can adjust the rates of the primo depending on how things are growing and so on.
Yeah, or where you're at in your golf schedule.
And it doesn't, the POA loves it, doesn't really hurt the POA. And again, I'm a pretty aggressive rate, so maybe that's just has adapted over time as well. But the biggest thing I would say is, frequent top dressing and then rolling and really mushing the sand into the leaf of the bentgrass to really bruise it and discourage it.
And not a lot of mowing. I mean, we were double cut and roll back in the day when I was
very
here.
much so.
Like that was the everything. Everyone was.
I mean, we hand mow, Jack, now once a week and do a cross cut on the greens. Everything else is triplex mow, but we backtrack. We always mow in the same direction. So one day we'll go front to back. The next day we go back to front.
And the guys pick up the reels and back up?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So we backtrack triplex mow now on a regular basis. And so it helps labor-wise.
You do cleanups with a walk behind?
Occasionally.
But not every day?
2 or 3 times a week. And then sometimes we do an outside cleanup with a triplex or an inside cleanup. Again, it just depends on wear and tear and what we're seeing.
The triplexes are so nice now.
They really are. They really are. Yeah. But the key for me is verticutting, grooming, top dressing, rolling.
All of those things you said damage or beat up the leggy bentgrass blade as opposed to the tight upright POA blade.
Yeah, obviously the idea is to try to bruise the bentgrass as much as possible.
Okay. And the light frequent top dressing, you do that with a walk behind?
Hand spreaders.
Hand spreader. That's really if you're going to try and do it frequently.
Yeah.
And do a nice even thing.
And a lot of times we'll do it in the evening. It's got to be dry. We do it in the evening. We might spin the heads that night just to knock it down a little bit, but you don't, you get
a heavy dew in the morning.
You take the dew off in the morning, and then again, mowing, you barely pick any of it up. Plus, I got a great mechanic, and he keeps things nice and sharp, and so.
Okay, so those. How about fertility wise? So we've hit
very lean
on
the greens. So,
just not much like nitrogen totals.
I'm going to say I'd have to check with Sean because he's all over that. He probably gave me something here. A pound and a quarter of N last year, maybe.
Yeah, just not much
on greens. I push a lot of calcium. I think that is just over the years. My greens always were, even though now we have XCG in a lot of them, they surface drain well, but they hold water very well. The calcium has really helped as well to help, firm things up, help dry things out. It's just made the plant a lot stronger, a lot more rigid. But yeah, so it's
when I was here, we weren't even using TDRs yet. Like so you mentioned they hold water, and what are those numbers? What is ideal for you? What are you looking at?
We're looking at low teens.
Okay, and if you're setting up in the morning, that's the way you want it.
Yeah,
low teens.
Yeah,
and they can ride then.
So a lot of times it's like I'll try to tell the guys, and I'm still old school.
You're feeling it.
I need to see it like really wilting before I want to hit it. My guys really like to go by the numbers where, I'm kind of fighting them at times to,
because they say like, hey,
put the damn TDRs away.
Yeah,
it's like 9. I'm like, well, how did it look? Well, it looked okay, but I don't know if it's going to make it through the day. I'm like, well, let's wait and see. It's going to, it will bounce back.
Yeah, it's not going to die tonight.
No.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So we,
how many guys do you send around with hoses?
2 to 3.
Yeah.
2 to 3. I mean, it's something where I have still very hard time relinquishing the control. So
are you putting guys on hoses on other parts of the golf courses, or is it only
tees,
greens?
you know,
Okay,
we
so you're
struggle a
still
lot with
putting-
tees. We had rebuilt tees 8-10 years ago and wasn't really happy with the mix, but I mean, we've been renovating them over time and stuff, and renovating
literally
is a good word.
renovating. Yeah, using Renovate Plus. That's great. So is what's your number on tees?
I mean, fairway areas, it's just all by sight.
Okay, those are.
I don't, you know, the TDRs to me are really, and again, it's not the end all. For me, it's just another tool to help evaluate the greens. And it gives my guys, and especially the ones that are less
new to it,
gives them, you know, something that they can look at and start to understand. So, but yeah, it's.
So you're still out there pulling hoses everywhere. Everywhere.
I mean, we hit fairway areas, you know. Yeah. Again, I really like to try to let the fairways dry out as much as possible.
Let's talk turf type there. Do you encourage the POA there?
It's all bent.
It's all bent.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I mean, we have some POA. We have a lot of ryegrass in areas. My predecessor had a bright idea of trying to oversee some areas at ryegrass at one point in time. So now we're fighting that. But yeah, it's. I say that predecessor. That's like 40 some years.
I thought I had already hit that too hard. So I bit my tongue.
But you know, it's funny, Jack, because it still feels like yesterday.
Yeah, I bet.
And when I talk in terms of 10 or 15 years, it could be 20, 25 years.
Yeah, it's really,
really so it's time has no relevance to me.
It's good. It's good. Well, you kept evolving this place.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about here.
I mean, that's what keeps it fun too.
You've also you're admitted to making, like, I've evolved it in the wrong direction, and I've had to evolve it out of that direction.
No, I mean, it's like you're not learning unless you kill something.
Yeah, good point.
So you know, I've learned that, you know, you're only as good as you are today in this business.
Yeah.
None of your members ever remember about yesterday or last year.
Yes.
You know, so if things and you know, I did reach a point in my career where I felt like I was invulnerable, but that does not exist.
No, it doesn't.
So fortunately, I've had a very forgiving membership. You know, because I've had my bad years. You know, but it's also been an opportunity to educate people, you know, and a lot of it back then was sunlight and air movement because they were very hesitant to take down trees.
Your bad years were disease related. Usually, right?
Or wet,
or
moisture.
Okay. And it was. I remember you said you had a bad take all year, or was it summer patch?
Yeah, that was shortly after we had regrassed with the bentgrass.
Okay.
And you know, it was one thing I didn't have to battle anthracnose, but
that's right.
I started battling take call.
Yeah, which is particularly on younger bents.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and it can be, I'll say, hereditary, where you know, it will affect the same areas year after year. But we've gotten in a pretty good take all protocol, and again, that's something of the past.
Yeah, that's not a concern anymore. Well, more turf types. So you're generally all bentgrass through the fairways.
Bentgrass tees, bentgrass fairways. I mean, obviously little POA here and there, some ryegrass.
How about rough? I know it's Heinz 57, but I'm sure it's something that you've worked on.
I mean, you know, when we oversee with bluegrass. I mean,
you do.
A lot of the when we sod, it's the turf type tall fescues with the bluegrass with it.
So probably green surrounds, you're pretty pure in turf type.
A lot of it, you know, some areas we're still switching out. I mean, you know, and what I'm seeing it over years is, again, that grass kind of evolves, and you know, I got a lot more bluegrass in areas and a lot less tall fescue, and other areas have a lot more tall fescue, and the bluegrass has kind of died out.
Is there anything, cultural practices that you do in the rough to encourage the right turf types?
I wouldn't say to encourage turf types. I would say just your general maintenance type of thing, where relieving compaction, stuff like that. You know,
so it doesn't die back and fill in with POA.
Yeah,
or you get the temptation to have to seed ryegrass. I
mean, you know, we spend so much more time spraying rough areas now than we ever did.
Well, that's where I was going to.
You know, so that
I figured you did.
That again evolved over time, where no one asked me to do it, but
Do you
you
still
know,
do an intermediate fairway cut?
we do.
Oh my
Much
gosh.
to my demise.
I
But
used to spray that with just the
yeah,
middle boom.
yeah, we
It
would
was a
just do
separate
that.
spray program.
And then we started one whole boom length, and now it's 2, and now it's 3 in
Okay,
areas.
so
And
that's
so
the spray that is the rough spray, I
yeah,
guess,
we'll do anywhere from 19 to 27, 28 acres, something
of
like
rough
that.
spray.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, no, it makes a world of difference. It's a definitive line when you get out there mid-season and you see where you're getting whacked with dollar spot and whatever deeper into the rough.
Cart damage.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean,
like you
there
can fight
and
against
again,
that.
we're throwing everything in the tank. You know,
C3. I know you're a big C3 guy.
C3 is huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
calcium again.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, we'll use a lot of. I don't know. Do I want to say? We try to use less expensive
Yeah.
fungicides, stuff
Yeah.
like that, you know, but
And probably only maybe 2 or 3 apps of that a year.
we're doing, I think last year we did 4. We had scheduled for 5, but a lot of it depends on the weather. I
Sure.
mean, we cruised into the fall in pretty good shape, so then
And there was
we cut out the last app.
well, there was no fungus pressure either.
Right.
There was no rain. You know? There was no
Right,
nothing.
exactly.
Everything was shot.
Right. No, it was a great fall.
It was great for golf.
No, it was. It was great for golf. It was a challenging year, but again, I mean, I'd much rather have it be dry. Than, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I don't have to pump out of ponds. We have a good water source, and yeah.
Okay, so I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about because we talked about POA, but you've done some projects last fall where you actually got your hands on some of this new POA seed.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we redid our 11th green, we needed more sod because the green got bigger.
You said you did the strip and flip, but
yeah,
yes, you didn't have enough.
We needed more, so we utilized our putting green, and our putting green, the lower putting green, was severely sloped, so we took the opportunity to regrade the green. We put in a little chipping area extension on it, and I decided to overseed it with POA seed.
Yes, this is, what's it called?
Probably
Does it have a
can't
name?
say yet.
Oh, okay, but POA seed.
It's in yeah,
Pennsylvania POA.
Pennsylvania POA, we'll call it. It's being worked out as far
good.
as the.
But that's exciting. So
it is exciting. It's very exciting.
So what time? So because you're like one of the only guys that has done this. So tell us the time that week, what you saw, how it was different than bent. How did you and
yeah, I mean, you know, we seeded it late, and the gentleman that I'm working with was like, you know, you'll be fine to seed it, cover it. We did get some germination. I mean, it was like November.
Oh,
so
way late. I
it
thought
was
you were gonna say
it was
late,
it was
October.
way late. But
Okay.
I was surprised at the amount of germination we did get.
Mm.
And I've sent him some pictures and he's stuff. Oh yeah, you come springtime, you're going to be just fine. So
okay, so you got germination. You looked underneath the blanket. Does it look like bentgrass when you see it? Does it look like ryegrass? What does it look like?
it looks like what's a good. I wouldn't say it looks like bent to me by any means.
Because bent is kind of
it
like
almost
fluffy.
looks more like an agriculture type crop. like you got soy, a lot of those soybeans coming. No, it's long. I mean, it was actually it is funky and it's longer than it should be. But I mean, obviously, I wasn't going to get in there and try to mow it. It's under the blanket, you know. He's very, very confident. He used a number of different golf courses experimenting with this, doing nurseries and stuff like that. So
you put it on the kind of outside of number 11, or the areas at least that you couldn't use, that you didn't have enough sod for. Did you also do a full green? Is the putting green?
The putting green's a full green.
Is a full green of this.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna get a good look at
this.
Oh yeah,
stuff. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. Root lengths and root mass and POA, like, you probably do pretty well. I mean,
we do. I mean, obviously,
it's POA.
We're going to lose, root depth over the summer, you know. So I do. I get down to a couple of inches.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's just what
it is. What it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
you do everything you can from in all the other parts of the year to encourage deep
and
roots.
I mean, we had good roots going into this fall. We had really good roots going in the summer last year, but again, depending on the summer, and my greens are still clay-based greens.
Yeah.
Even, we've worked hard. We've obviously done a lot of things with all different kinds of practices to get sand in them,
drill
and everything
and fill,
else.
deep time,
Dry
Weederman,
jet,
dry
everything.
jet.
We're on a pretty regular schedule. So
I'll tell the story about when I was doing setup here, when you first trained me at, I guess, like 05 or 06. You were trying to change the profile in the in at least in those cupping areas.
Yeah.
So like we would break that column in half and then put sand in the lower half to try because you were top dressing from the top down.
Right.
Then it was like, all right, well, let's top dress from the bottom up or something like that.
You lived through some of my madness.
Yeah, so
we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, well, I was the guy that was either like, either my cups were like a half inch too low or a half inch too high. Oh my gosh.
It's a good thing you're selling fertilizer.
That's right. That's right, buddy. Oh, that's funny. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you've done everything.
It's funny. I probably have like forgotten a lot more of the things that I have done over the years, but it is amazing.
Yeah, you're doing all the right things.
You hope they're right. I mean, you don't. I mean, we've always headed in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been a speed bump here or there, self-inflicted, mind you.
Sure.
But we've always headed in the right direction, and each
Mm-hmm.
year seem to get a little bit better and get closer to where we want to be. I mean, I hadn't really gotten super aggressive with the greens up until maybe 5-6 years ago.
Wow.
With the extent of verticutting and top dressing that we do. And it's just only because the club has supported that. They've given me the money to be able to have the labor, to be able to have guys here at night, and so it all falls hand in hand.
You keep moving. You've always kept moving, and
you got to.
Yeah, you've got to you can't get stagnant. You got to keep moving. You've done in 40 years. You've done all the cool projects. You have this beautiful river, and you have like a nature preserve in a way. And you did all the right things for floodplain and native plants on the.
We have eagles nesting on the golf course. I mean,
wow.
each year we have eaglets for the last 2 years now.
Holy cow.
So yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool to watch them come down and pick fish out of the stream.
This is you developed this culture, not just you, Nestor as well. This is a real naturalist's place.
No, it really is. Yeah,
you guys are naturalists.
No, we've done. I mean, Brett introduced. We did chestnut trees and trying to do the whole the chestnut, the hybrid chestnuts. We got them going in different areas. Yeah. He got beehives out here. Lehigh had its own Lehigh honey that they use on the menu and stuff. And
you
got garden.
The garden. You got native foraging. I know they're always out doing morel hunting.
What the hell did you plant over here?
Oh, that was the black. The oxides.
Oxides.
Yeah, those are the oxides, man.
You were all about that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Well, so were you though.
I supported it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what you learn.
So you do here, yeah. Keep moving.
But no, we had fun, and you always were kind of at the forefront of that too. You always had ideas. You were always coming in here, and some of them I entertained, some of them I did.
There you go. and I really did love this organic fert thing. I didn't even really know it was out there until you. Yeah. And then I was like, I'm looking at cases and looking at bags. I'm like, well, what is this stuff? EarthWorks. I see it's from Pennsylvania. Where is this guy? And they're like, oh, you don't know Joel? I'm like, no, I don't know Joel. Now I know him, man.
Probably too well. Better than you would like.
Yeah.
No, it's been fun working with Joel over the years. I mean, and that was one thing way back when I killed all the biology in these greens, so I had to build that up.
How'd you get in here?
Glenn Smickley.
Oh, wow.
Glenn was the one that put me onto him because Glenn was using them down at RTJ.
Yes. for a build for a
Yeah,
construction.
yeah.
Same sort of thing.
So we kind of started getting into it, and Glenn was the one that said, "Hey, you should give."
Because Glenn worked here. Did
He
you work
did.
for Glenn?
I took Glenn's place.
Oh, got
That's
it.
when I got the phone call.
Oh, that's nuts. Glenn's leaving, and there's an opening
Yeah.
for you at Lehigh. Where the hell's Lehigh?
Yeah. 42 years later.
Oh my gosh.
It's hard to believe.
All right, well, you've got a busy work day. I'm going to tell you I have a busy work day, so I better get to it.
Good.
Yeah, this was fun.
Always is, Jack.
All
Love you,
right.
brother.
All right, love
So,
you, Johnny. Good time, man.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.